everyone, Tim here again. Thanks for checking out my video. Today I'm finally going to show the install of my four-wheel camper pop-up canvas. If you haven't already seen, I have two other videos that talk about the pop-up material for my camper. The first one I talk about what I buy, and then the second one I show all the sewing process. That one's really interesting. It was one of my favorite videos to make. In this video I'm finally going to show how I took that big canvas and put it onto the camper. I'm going to show how it kind of gets sandwiched up there. I'm also going to show how I actually left it as one linear piece and then put it all together once it was on the camper, and then actually hand sewed the last seam. So I'm going to show all that. But before I put the canvas on, I had to get into the Arctic liner. And so here you'll see me putting that Arctic liner around the top of the camper. With the Arctic liner attachment installed, we again use the HH66. All of this is just temporary to tack it on until the final trim piece comes in and actually screws the side liner to the camper. We're installing the canvas. It's like my baby being born. Elise does all the work and I just get nervous. After half of the canvas was tacked up with the glue, I then used the metal trim piece to secure that half before moving on. Improvising on the holes over here a little bit, but it'll work. Happening. So as you can see, I actually didn't shoot an awful lot of footage when we were getting the canvas up and installed. It was bulky to handle. We needed all hands on deck. And also I was super nervous about it. I was really concerned that I was gonna cut something wrong or put a hole in something and ruin all the hours I'd put into the camper so far, or the canvas I should say. Luckily I had awesome help. Both my sister and my wife did most of the heavy lifting when it came time to install the canvas, and I'm super fortunate for that. So thanks Meg and Elise. As you can see, and we just showed in the video, after we put up the Arctic liner attachment all the way around, then we put half of the canvas on, including the bracket part. So there's a bracket both on the top and the bottom. We just put the top one on it first. The bottom we did once everything was ready to go. Also, you can see that the canvas I left as one linear piece. Again, the canvas was made in 4 parts, and then I sewed all 4 of those together, so there's 4 seams. But in the shop with the actual sewing machine, I only sewed 3 seams. So it was still this linear piece that had open flap on one. I didn't complete the circle yet. So when I actually made the canvas in the shop, I actually left excess material on one of those flaps that I could cut off once it was installed in the camper, and I knew everything lined up. I am so thankful for that, because it turns out my measurements were off, believe it or not. I had measured 1,000,000 times, but the roof of the camper and the base of the camper are actually different dimensions. That's so the roof sits over the camper and kind of provides an umbrella above it, is my guess. I don't really know. But anyways, those were different dimensions, and neither of which were correct for what I needed to do. It must have been essentially as you fold that canvas around, starting to take up material and starting to eat up your circumference. So in the end, I needed more material than I thought, and I'm so fortunate I left that extra 7-8 inches or whatever it was. I actually ended up cutting off a little bit. I'll show that in a second. So again, that's what we're doing right now, is we're gonna start putting that last seam together. We're about to make the final cut on the canvas. If we mess this up, we can just burn the camper down.
So this is the same cut you did on the other seams? Or the same measurement?
Same fold?
Like 1 inch?
I did 1 inch on one and a ½ inch on the other, but it's the same idea.
It's going to be the same size seam.
It's going to be the same size seam. So we decided not to sew the last piece in a machine. We're just going to hand sew it. We're going to glue it together here and then hand sew it, because this is the line that I thought that the canvas was going to end at. And if I'd cut there, we would be about 2 or 3 inches short. So what they say, measure nonce, cut 50. Here you go, Lise.
All the extra canvas you have.
I was nervous, if you can't tell. Cutting the umbilical cord on a baby.
At least one of us is calm, cool, and collected.
I'm so nervous.
Stop.
We're gonna take this, fold it back, tuck that in here, 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 here. It looks like it's not working. So as you can see, what we did was we cut that last bit of vinyl, leaving just enough so we still had our 1.5 inch seam allowance, and so we could actually make the full felled seam while the canvas was hanging there. It was a little confusing to figure out, but in the end, it was pretty self-explanatory of how to make that flap and fold everything together with just the glue. In a second, I'll show us hand sewing that with what's called a sailmaker's awl. Pretty cool device. It was like 12 bucks or something like that. Again, I got to borrow it from CU, so I didn't even have to buy that. With the canvas complete and one full piece hanging on the camper, it was then time to tuck the roof over the canvas. So it was canvas against the frame of the aluminum, and then roof came over and then folded over the canvas to kind of keep the weather and elements out, and then a trim came on that as well. So this is a really great view of how I tucked the vinyl underneath the roof, and then the roof folds over the vinyl. For whatever reason, the camper wasn't like that back in the day, but I do believe that's what they do now. Then I put up the next piece of that metal trim. When I'm putting up that trim, you see I use a bead of caulk. Then I'm going to use screws at all the appropriate spots. It has screws like every, 4 inches or so. I tried to get the screws to line up in the previous screw holes, but honestly I missed them pretty regularly. And also I had quite a few spinners, so make sure you set that drill at a nice low torque setting. It's a gap tooth now, but it's no big deal. You can see how I left that extra 2 inches below where I needed so I could grab on and pull the canvas tight while I screwed it in. I was nervous that these front corners looked a little baggy, but after using it, it works out totally fine. As we admired how great that last seam came out, we ran into a problem. Because the roof of the camper is wider than the base of the camper, we ended up with this excess material down in one corner, so we folded it over and it works just fine. Then, with the canvas fully secure with both the top and bottom trim pieces, it was time to cut off that excess 2 inches. Lower trim gets a vinyl insert that's meant to protect against the elements. Lisa and I are a couple of pirates right now. We're sewing using a sailmaker's awl. Making my loop, and then the pull. Okay. not sure if it was perfectly clear in that video, but we actually still went with the double stitch on that seam that we did by hand. It came out awesome actually. Elise did most of the hard work on that. She even used a ruler to make sure we had good stitch spacing. It's probably the prettiest seam on the entire camper. I didn't go into too many details about how that sailmaker's all works, but there's a great video from sailrite.com again that clearly shows exactly how to use it and how everything works. I'll link below just to help you find it. After that last seam was stitched, the canvas was finally installed. It was done, it was ready to be used. It was awesome. I was super happy.
Look at it.
But still, there was still a few finishing steps that we took in order to make it perfect. One thing that we did was use that HH66 glue to actually paint over every exterior seam, and that's supposed to help seal. With those industrial sewing machines, we actually use a pretty thick needle, and it does put a pretty big hole in your canvas so that HH66 will come through and seal all those out to help keep the rain and the other elements out. So Elise handled all that. Meanwhile, I grabbed a product called 303 Aerospace Protectant. Let me see if I have it here. Where is it? Found it. So it's actually this cleaner stuff and this protectant stuff. It's a little pricier than like your run-of-the-mill Armor All, but everyone on the forum says it's great, so I did it too. So again, Elise went ahead and applied the HH66 on all the seams to seal it. I put the protectant on both the inside and the outside. It's really supposed to help with the UV protection, which is awesome. One more quick thing that I forgot to mention earlier that we actually did a while ago was put patches on the lower corners of the windows. If you remember from the video before this one, part 2, linked right there, you'll see that the lower part of the window, so where the most complicated seam where the flaps all attached to the sidewall, that's not really like finished on the edges in that video. And so to finish that here, once we got home, we just cut out patches of the vinyl material, again used the HH66 and glued those on. Here's what that looked like. Thing that I wanted to do was put D-ring hooks on all the sides of the camper on the inside. What those hooks do is they act as attachment points so we can run a bungee across the camper when we're going to put the top down, and that way the sides get sucked in when the top comes down. Here's what that looked like. So the first thing I did was just use some of my scrap material from when I sewed my side, and I cut this guy to 3/4 inch. I cut it to 3/4 inch because that's the size of my D-rings. These D-rings I went to Home Depot and bought. They were like $1 a piece. You can see that if I open this up, this is the D-ring. I went with bronze or brass because I thought it looked cool. And the 3/4 inch you see works out just perfect. I went on the 4-Wheel Camper manual website and I saw what theirs looked like. They rivet theirs in. I don't have one of those like rivet gun things or grommet fixers. So I'm just going to use this HH66 vinyl cement. I've been using this throughout the project for all sorts of stuff. I bought it from Sailrite. You can buy it from anywhere. So I took this and I decided that 3 inches was a good length to fold over and get a total of 1.5 inches. So I'm just going to take that, mark it. Once it's marked, just cut it. You can see this vinyl coated polyester cuts really cleanly, so you don't really need to worry about much. That's that, and you can see we're just gonna fold it over and do it. I played around a little bit. I found 3/4 inch, so kind of halfway down. Looks pretty good to me. We'll see how it actually works. So I'm gonna go back on here, just mark 3/4 inch, flip it around, mark 3/4 inch. Bring my glue back in, kind of wipe the excess off, just get a little bit. This says that you're supposed to let it sit for 2 to 5 minutes. So I'm just gonna put some kind of right there. I just got the piece of paper down just so I don't get my tabletop messy. Put some right there. So you put it on both sides. I'm gonna let that sit for 2 to 5 minutes. Then I'm just gonna slide it on, fold it over. That's gonna be that. Kind of stick it together. Got a little bit of time to tweak it as soon as you put it on. All right, I like the way those look. I think it's gonna work out great.
Putting up the D-rings. And they're called a D-ring because they're shaped like a D.
So we're gonna use the HH66 and just glue them on the center of the window flaps. One little project I wanted to finish up with the canvas was some bungees to help pull the sides in when the top goes down. So I just went to Joann's and got some little clasps like that and some oval cord elastic or any type of elastic. I'm essentially just making myself tiny little bungee straps to hook into those D-rings. The annoying thing is it's kind of in the way when I'm putting the top down, but I don't know what I got, so we'll make it work. Pull out one of my pins. Pull up my next pin. So you can see as that came down, these came in nicely. Alright guys, that wraps up the sewing project video. So that was part 3 of 3, almost 60 cumulative minutes of footage about me sewing the canvas for my 4-wheel camper. If you have any questions at all, please go ahead and leave a comment below. I'll get right back to you. If they build up and I think I lost something, I'll make a whole other video, but I'm hopeful that this is pretty comprehensive. A few things you might be curious about is how much the whole thing cost me. I put a big order into sailrite.com for things like the mesh for the screen material, all my thread, all my glues, all my basting tape, some other just kind of accessories for sewing, and that cost me $100. The vinyl coated polyester, or the canvas as I call it all the time, for the, I think 11 rolls of that cost me $150 from an eBay store, linked below. And then also I spent $30 on Velcro. So that's a total of $280 for pretty much all of my material cost for this project. I'm not sure if you can even get one of these made by the manufacturer of the camper, the 4-wheel camper or all-terrain camper. If you can, I would guess it's in the thousands of dollars. So I'm pretty happy with my price and everything else. Plus, it was awesome to learn all about sewing. Like I had said before, I had never really sewed almost anything. And so now I actually think I'm a pretty confident sewer. I know at least the lingo, I know what to look for in a stitch, things like that. And I think I could sew many other things in the future, which I plan on doing, such as the Arctic liner. So that's going to be a video coming out hopefully pretty soon. I got to get that material still, and then we'll sew up the Arctic liner walls to help insulate the camper. Also coming up are more videos about the camper rebuild. I have a video about making the door. That was a really fun woodworking project that I thought I'd share with you. And I'm also building out the interior, building the kitchen area, or the galley as it's called. That is all in progress. Now that my arm is fixed, I don't have that broken shoulder blade, or it's healing, I can start to use my tools again, things like that. So be on the lookout for those videos coming. Also, hopefully, we actually use the camper soon. So I bought it to do skiing mostly here in Colorado. I love to ski. I'm actually on my 14th consecutive month of skiing. And so you will be seeing me and my wife and my friends out on the mountains, in the parking lots, at the trailheads, both skiing the resorts and the backcountry. So if any of that interests you, whether it's the truck camper rebuild, using the truck camper, or the various sports I like, consider hitting the subscribe button. I'd love to have you follow along on the different things that we're doing. Also, if you enjoyed this video at all, whether for information or entertainment, consider hitting the like button and even sharing it with your friends and family. I really enjoy making these videos, and feedback like that helps encourage me to do it more. I put a ton of time into both my projects and the videos, and so seeing people actually enjoy them and appreciate them is awesome for me. That pretty much wraps up this video, this project, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching as always. Bye. Sitting here in the show.
It's campable again.
It's campable.